Good morning, everyone. How are you? Welcome to Winning in the Workplace. This is Maurice Velasquez. I am your host, and I thank you very much for joining us. This is the show where we specialize and provide on giving you guys and giving everyone and studying and talking with our guests about tactics, strategies, insights, and habits, practices, tools on how to help executives, how to help middle managers, how to help upper managers, how to help supervisors and team leaders become extraordinarily great leaders in a much more collaborative way, in a much more effective way, in a much more united way to give their frontline teams better direction so that they in turn can become high performance teams. That's really what it's all about. It's about creating high performance teams everywhere, at the top levels, at the middle levels of management and administration and support teams and frontline teams, so we can help our members, we can help our clients, we can help our customers and provide extraordinarily really good customer service to one another and to those that we serve. So that's what we're about. It's called Winning in the Workplace for that reason, because we all want to win in the workplace. And interestingly enough, there's a dynamic that I've learned, I would say perhaps a little too late, but thankfully I learned it early enough. And that is that in order to win, somebody doesn't have to lose. In the workplace, there's what's called collaborative victories, collaborative winning, in which in order for my department to succeed, it doesn't mean that that other department does not have to succeed. It doesn't mean that I have to like everyone that I work with, but I certainly have to learn how to work well with them, respect them, learn to trust them, recognize our differences, and become really good at collaborating, good decision making, and making things happen. All right, so don't forget, you can find me at mauricetraining.com. My email is maurice@teamrealworld.com. We're eventually going to align those two rather soon. You can find all my resources, all the tools that we refer to, that I allude to, on our website, mauricetraining.com. You'll notice that we have a lot of different menus, a lot of different free material, free resources, and that's also the portal for our online library. Our online library is also called Winning in the Workplace. You can access it through mauricetraining.com. Just simply go to library, or there's a couple of URLs that you can use for that as well. You can go to winningintheworkplace.com. Okay, or you can also go to managementandmovies.com. Management and Movies has become a really hot commodity. It's a really popular series in which I dive into all the tools and habits of the alignment model that we train here. But I do it by showing movie clips and by showing different series of shows or movies or movie clips or themes throughout movies. We all enjoy movies, so therefore I like to use them because they tend to relate to us really well. So anyway, we have 20 episodes out there. They're actually quite fun. Some of them are funny. Hopefully you'll find all of them very engaging and helpful. So find that at managementandmovies.com. All right, so let's go ahead and get started with our show. Today we have a really good show. We're going to talk about a very common theme, a very common discussion that we hear all the time in business. Stay in your lane, man, and stay in your lane. And usually what that means is, look, you're crouching into my area, or you're missing in action. It usually can mean one of those two things, but it's mostly the crouching in somebody else's lane. You know, just think of it. You're driving down the highway, and you notice the car next to you is slowly creeping. You know, it's a horrible feeling. It really is horrible. You get, and sometimes you can't tell whether it's me or it's the other person, but you notice the other person's creeping up on your lane. It happened to me the other day where somebody actually wanted to get into my lane extremely fast. They didn't judge it quite well, and they had to kind of push me over before they actually hit the traffic on pause. But anyway, so yeah, I had to let him in real fast because, otherwise it would have been bad. But you guys know how that feels. In business, we tend to do that to each other. We tend to do that to each other quite well. We don't stay in our lanes very well, okay? And we all need to stay in our lane. So what we're going to dissect a little bit is this problem. It's this issue of staying in our lane, a little bit of what that means, and how it's severely impacting our leadership. And the reason being is because, in a practical sense, when executives don't stay in their lane, and there's a reason why executives don't stay in their lane, they tend to crouch into the area of the managers. And the managers get very frustrated. They throw their hands up in the air and go, well, we've been trying to tell him, we've been trying to tell her, well, okay, fine. We want to do it that way. It's fine. And then what happens is there's a disconnect that happens when managers feel that the executive or the executives have really just become managers, okay? And they're glorified managers because they are constantly diving into not only how to do things, but how is everyone doing in those things. So executives tend to, I'm sorry to say, they tend to be in a very bad habit in which they remember the days when they were in control of everything. And that's why they became executives, because they were really good at what they do. But the one thing that they're not as good at is how to now operate as an executive and get out of management. All right. And when you talk to the executives, it's very common. I hear it all the time. As a matter of fact, it's probably the most common thing that I hear whenever companies hire me to coach them, to train them, and that is the upper levels. They somehow just don't trust that the next level down, the middle managers or the supervisors, that they're going to step up, that they're going to deliver, or that when I give direction and I give assignments, or we, the executive team, approve certain things, things tend to disappear. We have to ask each other, then all of a sudden start wondering, well, where are we with project A or project B, or where are we with this or where, and then they have to go and dive into really just the oversight of it. And that gets into the whole issue of staying in your lane. All right. So the managers feel that. So there's this battle back and forth between executives and between managers. And then the managers do the same thing to the frontline supervisors. And then what happens, we all start waiting on each other. Why? Well, because, hey, I know the executives are going to get involved, so I'm just waiting on them. We ask them for some questions, or we propose something. We haven't heard from them. And so I'm just waiting. And so what happens when we get in each other's lanes, we tend to push the other one out, and the other person kind of says, okay, fine. And then weeks later, months later, years later, everyone's wanting for the other person to step up into their lane, into their role. Yeah, but now there's habits. Now there's distrust. Now there's different mechanics in play. Why? Because we've been doing things a certain way, and you want me to step up? And it's, yeah, well, I know what happened last time. So this dynamic has to be addressed. We have to be able to stay in our lane. All right, so what does that mean to stay in our lane? On the screen here, I have three individuals. For those of you that aren't seeing it on the screen, sorry, I'll describe it for you. I have three individuals. Stephanie, at the top level, has Stephanie as one of the executives. And just think of Stephanie as a group of executives, not just one of them, all right? And then you have James in the middle management, and then you have my picture, my ugly mug there at the bottom. Maurice, I'm a frontliner. I'm a frontline supervisor, all right? So when these three individuals, regardless of who they are, regardless of who the person is, when these three positions work really well in their lanes, that all manifest and they show great leadership. We've talked about previously, we have to get away from the idea that the executives are the leaders. Okay. That's not true. The executives are the leaders in their function as executives. When they stay within their role and when they stay within their lane and they function in those responsibilities as executives, they are being great leaders. When they get out of that, and they start creeping into other lanes, or they start moving into other people's lanes, or stop being derelict in their duties, then they cease to be great leaders. All right. So the middle managers, the Jameses of the world, when they do their role, they are being great leaders. And then Maurice, when I'm a frontline supervisor and I'm playing my role, then I'm being a great leader. So the beauty about this model, the alignment model, is that it really empowers leadership throughout the organization. It doesn't refer to leadership just being the folks at the top. All right. It's everyone has a particular role to play, and we have to play it well. I know that a lot of people don't like sports imagery, so I'm not going to do too many today, but I will do the one of baseball. Okay. Baseball is a good one to use here. The pitcher has a sphere of influence in which the pitcher is responsible for being the pitcher. The first base, the catcher, each position has its scope of authority and its scope of primary area to play. But that doesn't mean, though, that the pitcher sometimes doesn't have to go to first base. And it also doesn't mean that the shortstop has to move over to second base, or the second, there's certain situations in the life of the game in which you have to recognize what are called exceptions. I hate to call them exceptions, but the particular scenarios in which you have to play different roles. All right. And if you're a smaller operation, yeah, you pretty much know that you're wearing different hats because there's just not a lot of warm bodies to make money here. So, you have a lot of executives that are frontliners. Well, there's different exceptions. There's different scenarios, and we'll dissect those as we talk in our podcast and in our shows. But for now, we have to first establish the threshold, where to start from. All right. And where to start from is recognizing that each player has a area to play in the field. And so if everyone focuses on their prime area, then it's a lot easier to then discuss the scenarios, the alternatives, the exceptions. The role of Stephanie at the executive level is first and foremost, and ultimately, it's to speak to the vision. It's to cast the vision and to constantly be asking about outcomes. All right, where are we with? Okay, where is this report? Where is that report? And there's a level of accountability that the executives have to bring to the table. All right, but they're not in the area. They should not be in the area of organizing or figuring out how to get things done. That is the role of the middle managers. The middle managers are the ones that are supposed to organize with each other. They're the ones that are supposed to collaborate with each other to get game plans figured out, organize, and work with the frontliners, with the executives on figuring out the game plans. And they're the ones who pretty much run point from the middle. And they're a incredibly pivotal role to play. And then the frontliners, their role is to implement. And to implement successfully, consistently, and produce high-performing behaviors in the front lines. When this is aligned properly, and this is what we call the alignment model, okay, the leadership alignment model that our entire program is based on. When this is aligned properly in companies, then things work. Why? Because the executives know that our middle managers are organizing. They come to meetings, they're very well organized. When they leave meetings, they implement very well. They collaborate very well across departments. They're stepping up to address problems. They are addressing issues. They don't run away from issues. They prioritize themselves, and they are working on unified top projects. They're all having different things to do, but they all know how to come together in a good rhythm. And the middle managers regularly step up to fill in that gap, to clarify where are we and what's going on and what are the major problems that we do. So there's a confidence that happens with the executives know that the middle managers are organized and they're organizing. All right. And then the middle managers show an incredible amount of competency and incredible amount of efficiency when they trust that the frontliners are implementing, that we trained everybody, that we showed everybody, that we addressed the primary issues that we're aware of. We have the tools. We've trained everybody on their tools. We've given everybody the training. We've clarified expectations. We've set up the systems, the processes, and we are now executing, and we're empowering the frontline supervisors to help and support the frontliners on how to execute these things. That's the aligning model. There's two sides to the alignment model, but that's when this works. It works really well, okay? However, unfortunately, in corporate America, we have a big challenge, a big problem, okay? And that problem is that normally it looks sort of like this. Again, for those of you that are watching, you can see the graph that I'm using. For those of you that are driving or listening, it's okay. I'll describe it to you as we go, all right? So you have a group of team players. You have executives, you have middle managers, you have frontliners. And what happens in corporate America is something to this fact. Two executives talk about a particular project, and they've been discussing it for weeks, and they want to implement it. Well, executive number 3 decides, well, I'm going to go talk to the IT service manager about it. Now, they may or may not know about it, but they did it in an unaligned way. In other words, they took it upon themselves to go talk to the IT manager because I know the IT team is going to have to implement this, and the front desk team is going to be the one that we're going to first try out this new module on their screen, on the software we've been rolling out, that we've been trying to roll out for a long time. So they talk to the IT service manager. The IT service manager comes out of that meeting. The executive then goes and talks to one of the front desk about it. You can tell right there that there's conversations that are going in different directions. Okay. Some people know, some people don't know. That frontline person that works for the front desk has a really good friend in the intake department, and they have coffee. Sometimes they have lunch almost every day. And so this person now tells this person, hey, did you hear they're going to change this? They're going to change that. And, so now again, you can tell that some people know, some people don't know. All right. Then that person doesn't talk very well with their intake manager. So they certainly didn't report it up, but that frontliner has a really good relationship with the other executive. Why? They might play golf together, or they might have kids that go to the same school together. They see each other for whatever reason or the other. That individual in the front lines has a good relationship with that executive. And they told them, hey, look, word on the street is that we're going to be implementing that module in 2 weeks. And that partner, that executive goes, what? Wait a minute. I got to go talk to Lori. Well, Lori's the other executive. All right. But Lori and he do not get along. So then, of course, he's going to go, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go talk to the front desk supervisor, and I'm going to let him know, look, if this happens and this happens, you got to make sure you hold it. You got to make sure that you do not implement it. And the front desk person says, sure, but then the IT department is already way ahead of this, so they implement it. And I was told as the front desk supervisor not to implement this, but all of a sudden I turned my computer on Tuesday, and it got implemented. All right. And the front desk person is going, what happened? I thought we were supposed to hold off on this. I'm sorry to say, y'all, but this is corporate America 101. Everywhere I go, even way before I was a manager or a coach, or I helped companies how not to operate this way, that's the way I operated. That's the way I operated in every department. And the companies where I worked, where we were very efficient, they were very conscious about not operating in this way. They operated in a much more aligned method. And it was in those companies where I learned the how to and the not how to. And I kept hearing the term alignment. I'm like, oh, there's a model called the alignment model. And so, of course, years later, I modeled it and I incorporated I built this training program around it, right? But you see, this model here, this is what's called triangulation. And this is what's referred to, what we refer to as the triangulation model. The triangulation model is, I'm sorry to say, the most preferred style of decision-making and project management in companies. It is not conducive for professionalism. It is undermining. It fosters distrust. It creates an incredible amount of delays. Things take forever. Decisions aren't made very well. And then when things do get implemented, it's hard to celebrate. Why? Because everyone's upset with one another. And then no longer do we implement that. Then another one is coming down the pipeline just like this. And, I guess we're doing well, but it's just very frustrating. Why? Because triangulation hurts. It's another term for that is you go around one another. All right. And in a nutshell, really what it is the fact that people are not staying in their lane. Okay. People are not communicating in the proper methodology. They're not communicating with each other because they're not having consistent conversations, or better yet, they don't have reliable conversations. And so let me ask you, those of you that are on the line, those of you that are listening, is this your experience in corporate America? It is certainly the number one problem in corporate America. It's called triangulation. Okay. And we have to move away from it. We have to recognize it for what it is and say, we've got to get out of it. It reminds me of this commercial. It was very famous a couple years ago, the tattoo artist. Take a listen to it.
First tattoo?
Yeah.
Relax, amigo. It's going to look okay.
Only okay?
No worries, boss. I'm one of the tattoo artists in the city.
You mean one of the best tattoo artists in the city, right?
Something like that. Yeah.
Aren't you supposed to draw it first?
Stay in your lane, bro.
Just okay is not okay, especially when it comes to your network. AT&T is America's best wireless network.
That is the problem. And as we saw in the commercial, it's quite funny. It's funny because it's true. Okay. Man, stay in your lane. And I really like that AT&T picked up on the fact where it's being okay is not enough. And so I hate to say that this way, but triangulation creates mediocrity. Okay. It creates half-hearted efforts. It creates just being okay. In order for us to create high performance teams, we have to tackle this issue of triangulation. We have to tell ourselves, initially say, okay, I don't know how I'm going to not triangulate within my team because I don't know that I trust my team. And there's certain individuals that I don't trust. I have to go around them. Okay. And I know some folks are going around me. And I don't know how we're going to clear this up, but the journey to high performance is to train everybody on how to move out of triangulation, how to move out of randomness into a much more agreed, intentional approach of aligned communication. I may not know how to do it. I haven't gone through the program yet, or I'm still learning in some ways. I don't know how to do it quite yet, but I've got to commit myself that I want to move away from being a person that fosters triangulation. So I'm going to commit myself to learning how to, and give yourself a goal, like no different than if you have an exercise goal, a health goal, a financial goal. You want to make this a professional behavior goal. I'm going to watch out for bad professional habits, And I'm going to start focusing on good professional habits. The first one I'm going to tackle, the most important one, is triangulation. How to move away from triangulating others and instead go to the right person who's responsible for that, and not necessarily go around them and me trying to be that voice of accountability, even though I should be holding some folks accountable. When I go around others, or I don't go to the right person to talk about it, I am triangulating them. And when I can tell that others aren't coming to me, when they should be coming to me, I'm being triangulated, and we all tend to be triangulated. The first step is making a commitment that we are going to not triangulate each other. All right. The way to do that is to start learning the roles, the strategic direction, and they have to be very involved, very little in the day-to-day. The organizers, the ones in the middle, they move a little differently. They organize and they get very involved in the day-to-day, not so much in the big picture. And then the frontliners, they're very involved in the day-to-day, and they don't get involved so much in designing or creating the big picture. But notice none of these leaders get out entirely of either a big picture or day to day. It's a matter of trust. I'm going to trust that I have managers who are good organizers, and they're going to dive more into the day to day. And they, in turn, are going to trust and empower and oversee and help and support the frontliners and their teams to get involved in the granularity of things. And we're all going to learn this really well. I was at a meeting yesterday in which this was shown really well. It was 3 board members, 2 of the executives, 2 middle managers, and 2 frontliners in this particular meeting because we were discussing the strategic plan. At one point in the conversation, the board members tended to stay very quiet because they're very good at their role. When they spoke to the high level things and not the granularity of things. When it was the granularity of things, the frontliners in the room and the frontline supervisors tended to speak more to that. So at one point, one of the board members said, guys, permission to go tactical, but I want to make sure that what I'm about to say regarding this tactic approach is simply something I've experienced, but then turned over to a couple of the frontliners, and the frontline supervisors. However, you guys are the ones making the decision, but I'm just going to throw this. Is it okay? So of course, I said, sure, come on. See, right there, that's a great leader, a great communicator. He's communicating that I'm a board member. I'm at the very top. Okay. And I'm going to speak to tactical things, very granular things, and I'm about to step over my lane. All right. So he communicated, he announced it, he asked permission. And we all said, well, sure, definitely tell us. And he said, well, the experience I've had in organizing projects has been with 3 most recent platforms. And in our company, we just went through a major study. If you want me to, I can send it to you so y'all can make a decision and compare. Y'all probably have done this. Have y'all done a study yet? And he turned again to the front of the supervisors, and the supervisors, no, we haven't. We're going to, but man, if you can get that information. See, there's that collaboration. What the board member was doing was clearly saying, I am not getting into your granularity. I'm speaking to it, but I am being very aware that I'm probably causing confusion because I'm throwing my weight around. I'm a board member and I'm about to speak to the tactics, and I want you to consider certain ways of doing things. That's throwing your weight around. I don't care how nicely you do it. I don't care how professionally you do it. It's still throwing your weight around. All right. So you have to do it in the most gracious way. And so what happened was a fantastic way of doing it. He announced it. He said, I'm going to go tactical. Is it okay? Everybody said yes. He said, well, let me share with y'all what we did. He spent 2-3 minutes on it. He said, here's the 3 softwares that we considered. We eventually went one. There's a reason, but you guys take it. And listen, guys, I'm out. And I'm perfectly fine if we don't go that route. I just wanted to say that it's probably going to take about 6 weeks to figure this out if we're going to do this. And another board member said, 6 weeks? Well, wait a minute. Well, we're not going to be able to. And then he addressed one of the strategic objectives. He said, so we're going to have to move this project over another 3 months. They were able to have a great, fantastic conversation because they knew how to speak and how to stay within their roles and responsibilities. And after the meeting, I talked to a couple of team leaders, and they said, man, that was fantastic. That was so helpful. And yeah, we're going to consider that. We had kind of considered using that software or not, but he brings some good point. There is a good example of speaking to it, but not diving in and controlling it. All right. That's an example of how it ought to work. What most managers do, what most executives do, we speak to it, and we speak to it in a way that's declarative. We speak to it in a way that, look, You know what you guys need to do? There's a software out there we use. It's called Monday. It's fantastic. It's much better than this software, this way. Y'all need to do that. Y'all need to do this. That's where we have to stay out of it, and we have to stay within our lanes. Okay. So when this works, it works really good. So let's take a look real quick. The alignment model in its entirety. Here it is. All right. The executives focus on the vision and they speak to outcomes. The middle managers, they organize and they generate game plans. They work together with the frontliners, and the frontliners are the ones that implement and they provide extraordinary customer service. That's the right side of the alignment model as things get pushed from the top to the bottom, the vision, the organization, and the implementation. Now, no sooner, here's where things really fall apart. When that's going really well, this is what happens. The frontliners start implementing, and sure enough, we start having problems all over the place. Internal problems, quagmire problems, silo disruption problems, departments not talking to each other, the clients, the systems, the computers, whatever. Things start falling apart or real big issues start happening. Right there. It's right there at that level in the alignment model. Okay, as companies get organized, a plethora and an enormous amount of problems start happening. And we tend to let those things sit there. And the middle managers and the frontline managers don't have a mechanism. They don't have a structure by which they can tackle the problems, organize the problems, figure out, and what's called air traffic control, and figure out which level and who should tackle the problem so we can make sure we're implementing successfully. So what happens in corporate America very, very much is that those problems remain and they produce and provide an extraordinary amount of delays, and people get frustrated and they get disconnected because no one seems to be addressing problems. Then we put out a company survey. We ask people what the issues are. They tell us all about it. The feedback goes back. They tell us that they're collecting it. 6 months later, they ask us in another survey, how are things going? And it's like, why am I answering this question all over again? It's the same problems we addressed 6 months ago, but no one seems to be addressing them. Okay, why? Because look at the graph that I'm showing you here on the screen. Okay, for those of you that are driving, I'm showing a bunch of dots at the bottom, so a bunch of red dots at the bottom. The front lines are trying to implement, but those things are mounting up. They're mounting up, and and no one wants to fix things. All right, so the alignment model has the other side to it, and that is the left side of it. The right side is the implementation of the vision, the organization, the implementation, the problems are addressed. Then what needs to happen is the mechanism has to be in place to communicate those problems up at regular rhythm meetings, at regular key touch point meetings throughout the organization, so that the frontliners can then determine, no, we can handle this at our level, or better yet, there's about 40% things that need to be brought up to the middle managers, and the middle managers can then say, you know what, we need to discuss this. We need to organize this between IT and engineering, or between sales and between publications and between production. And the middle managers need to get together. But if the middle managers, they meet like what? Oh, well, we meet as needed. That's another way of saying we don't meet. Okay. Then those problems have nowhere to go. Okay, but if we know that the middle managers meet every Tuesday at 9 o'clock for an hour and a half to address problems, then we know where to go with the problems. And if all those managers in the middle know that the frontliners are meeting with each other and with their teams at certain key times, then they know where to bring those problems to. But if everyone's chasing around each other, that's why everyone's time management is out the window, because the rhythm is not in place to support problem solving. And so the problems stayed at the bottom. So we need to create a communication up. The role and the responsibility of the middle managers is to then capture all the things that are brought up to them by the frontliners, by the frontline supervisors. And then we got to figure out, okay, of these 40% that are in the middle, how many of these really need to be us, and how many of these do we need to go up to the executives and get their involvement? So then, of course, we got to figure that out, and we need to then report up on our progress. We got to propose new problems or issues that the executives need to get involved, and therein lies the cycle. And this cycle, when it happens, it works. It works. The meeting I just told you about, what was interesting is that the document that board was looking at was a document that 2 or 3 weeks before was created by the frontliners in their weekly staff meeting with middle managers addressing what are some of the problems that they need addressed, and they identified which are the ones that they need middle management assistance and which ones they need executive or board approval. So that document made its way up. It got to the board level approved it, and next Monday, we're going to report back down to the frontliners and show them what was decided, what was empowered, the budget that was assigned to this, and the committees and the different departments that they feel they should be handled this. So therefore, the decisions were made. The middle manager then now going to organize that with the frontliners, and the frontliners now have approval. When frontliners realize that their voice matters and there's somewhere to go in order to bring problems up, and that some of those problems make it all the way to the top, some stay at the middle, and some we're going to handle. It is incredible how the frontliners step up and how your whole culture changes, because the model, the alignment model is in place, and everyone shows by everyone staying in their lane, by everyone staying focused, everyone exudes an incredible amount of leadership. Okay. Now, the two things that get in the way is, of course, trust. Okay. But it's not just trust. Trust happens because we all got into bad habits. So if we all learn to get into the right habits, and I know that whenever we come out of meetings, you're going to execute the way that we agreed you're going to execute, then I'm not going to send out certain emails. I'm not going to walk around and hold everybody accountable. So we have an agreement. I'm going to get into this habit of coming into these meetings and discussing and dialoguing, and you get in the habit of going outside the meeting, y'all organize it, and then go communicate. And if y'all are organizing and communicating, implementing, I won't have to use my bad habit to go around and check on everybody and create the crossing of lanes. So yes, it's an issue of trust, but we sometimes just leave that out there to the ether to kind of figure it out. Yeah, we just don't trust each other, but we're not trusting each other about what? Whenever clients say to me, yeah, there's just not trust between them, I usually say, okay, but there's not trust about what? What behaviors or what habits are being manifested that have eroded trust? And that's when they say, well, you know what she does? She does this, she does this, she does. No wonder this person doesn't trust her. Then I go talk to the other person and say, well, what is she doing? And say, well, she's doing this and she's doing it. And is this why you're doing this? Oh, yeah. And you basically pretty much see it. Okay. So if we change certain habits and we align those two individuals to listen to each other and address those 6 issues, these 3 things that this one's doing and this 3 things, and we help create a new habit, a new discipline, and a new model between them, what all of a sudden starts changing? Trust. So whenever we want to fix trust, we got to fix the bad habits that are happening between them, that are causing the behaviors, that are causing the distrust, that are causing the lack of engagement. Okay. And all that can happen is if we have certain places to go to and have effective, powerful touch point conversations throughout the organization. All right. It is time to move on into the toolbox segment. In the toolbox segment, I want to revisit one of my favorite, actually, probably you could say it's my favorite book, because it's the one I've used the most ever since 1996. So when I read this book, First Break All the Rules, so you might have a different edition. So if I refer to a certain page, it might not be the one, but the one I'm referring to is page 28. Page 28 just lets the cat out of the bag. It pretty much says, look, middle managers, frontline supervisors, if you want to be extraordinarily great leaders, there are 12 things that you should be doing. If you're not doing these 12 things, then you're really not focusing on the right things. And what it is, it's a study. It's an in-depth study interviewed by the Gallup organization of over 80,000 managers in over 400 companies. All right. And this was republished again in another book called It's the Manager, in which came out in 2018. And the same 12 items, it's usually referred to as one of the standards of leadership at the manager level. So here they are. Let me show it to you on the screen. All right. And let's go through them real quickly so you can pretty much dissect into the stools. Here's the 12 things. Notice how little has to do with money. All right. We tend to say we lose employees because of lack of money. And yes, that is a fact. But that's not the only factor. These 12 items really impact the culture of your organization. And if managers focus more in these areas, they would stay within their levels of organization and within their leadership. Communicate expectations to your team, provide them the tools they need, give the teams the opportunity to do their best. That's number 3. Number 4, provide recognition or praise to your teams every week. See, right there, that's where things really start falling apart. I had a supervisor, an upper manager, said every week, I ain't going to do that every week. That's just not me. And when I started talking to her supervisors, they all had the same attitude because she had instilled in them. And no, we're not going to sit around and pat everybody on the back. We were able to work through that. And today she is probably one of the most encouraging upper managers because she's learned her role. She now realizes that, no, I have to do a lot of praise to my supervisors, and we have to emphasize that. So this book, this toolbox on page 28 of First Break All the Rules, really emphasizes step number 4 is provide recognition of praise to your teams every week. But that doesn't mean you do praise or you provide recognition the same way to each individual person. Everyone's different. That's why most of the recognition should be done by the frontline supervisors. One of the biggest mistakes in corporate America is that we're going to recognize everybody from the top. The executives are going to be the one going woo-hoo, woo-hoo, woo, and they should. That is an incredible, it's about 30% of what executives should be doing. But when we rely on the executives to be the one that do that only, then we have a problem. The ones that should be doing that weekly are the frontline supervisors, then the middle managers, but none of them. That's number 4. Number 5, how to show sincere care for each team member. In corporate America, we have an attitude, a lot of people have an attitude, look, I just go to work, I'm not looking for friends. And I know what you mean by that. You want to make sure that we don't bypass professionalism or we don't undermine quality because we're trying to be friends with each other. And that is a major problem in corporate America, is that managers tend to be really good friends with their frontline team members, and they don't know how to be leaders. They don't know how to be the bosses. They don't know how to be the managers because they're too close. They're too friendly with their employees, with their team members. And so it becomes too personal, too personable, too familial. And there we react. And then we say, well, you know what? I'm not here to make friends. Well, but you know what? The balance is somewhere right in the middle. And what you need to do is balance it by saying that what we do as managers is we show sincere care for each team member. What happens in your life is private, but it does matter to me. I want you to know that it does matter to me. And I want you to have friends here and colleagues here that you can talk about those things, because we spend at least 40, sometimes 50, 60 hours a week here. We have to be human. We have to be there for one another. We have to be encouraging with each other, keep each other in our thoughts and our prayers. We got to encourage each other and just be human about it. Okay. So we have to show an incredible amount of care for one another. Number 6, the manager should encourage the development of each team member. Okay, and that has a lot to do with training. Very similar to item number 3, give teams the opportunity to do their best. Number 7, probably the very heart and core of the roles of managers and supervisors is this: sincerely show that the opinions of team members really count and are considered. When I talk to a lot of team members, they don't even know where to go to bring their ideas. And when they do, they get shot down very fast. And so, you know what? My opinion just doesn't matter. And usually the pillow talk or the talk around the table at dinner, back at home, is, you know what? At the office, they just don't. You know what I'm going to say? They just don't listen. All right. Why? Because not my opinions. And managers and executives tend to default by saying that, well, you know, we can't implement everything they say. And I mean, half of what they want done is just pure garbage. It's terrible. Okay, but you still need to listen to them, and you still need to show care of what their opinions are. And you need to show that their opinion counts, even when 80% of what they're saying is incorrect or hasn't worked in the past, or I can't believe that, you know. And so we develop certain attitudes of saying, hey, bring me problems, bring me solutions, don't bring me problems. And that's just a nice fancy way of saying, don't talk to me, because half the time the person doesn't know what the solution is. Or better yet, I knew what the solution was 6 months ago when I gave it to you and you shot it down. Now I'm trying to think of 5 different ways. I can't think of a better way, but the problem still exists. But you don't want to hear problems. You want to hear solutions, but you shoot me down all the time, because managers tend to have the idea that, look, I do not want you to bring me problems. I want you to bring me solutions. It works the other way around. It's really the other way around. If you want to teach frontliners how to create solutions, you first have to listen to their problems, and you have to talk through the problems and help the team identify the solution. If you don't create the environment where good conversation can happen, people aren't going to converse with you. You have to create the environment where conversations can happen so we can figure out the solution. And the more you do that week in, week out, week in, week out, month in, month out, what you'll create is you'll create a team that is very comfortable talking about problems and solutions. And then there it is. They'll bring you a problem and they'll bring you the solution. But you can't just simply say, y'all got to figure it out. Only bring me solutions. And so that goes at the heart of number 7. Sincerely show that the opinions of team members really count and are considered. Number 8, promote how the organization's mission, vision, values makes their job important. I would say that probably half of the attendees at all my workshops and all my programs, whenever I ask the question, how many of you have clearly defined mission, vision, values? I would say half of them say yes. Our mission, vision, values are very clearly defined. We have them on the website. We have them in our handbook. And yeah, we have them. I said, great, excellent. So notice about 50% don't. All right. And then I ask, all right, how many of you that do have them, how many of you in your companies do you promote them on a regular, almost day in, day out basis? And boom, the hands go down. One of them said, well, yeah, I know where we have the mission statement and I know we have our values printed in the back of the warehouse where most of us walk through in front of, but that's about it. I said, all right, so what's your mission, vision, and values? And of course, they tried to recite it and they were lackluster about it. Very few team members today can really recite their mission, vision, values as though it was like the national anthem or it was the belief creed. You tend to have everybody kind of familiar with it, but it's not promoted very well. Well, when you don't promote the mission, vision, values to where it's in the top mind awareness of your team members, then things fall apart really badly because you can't then excite. Your frontliners cannot reasonably excite and give your frontliners the big vision and the big picture of why we're asking you to do all this granular stuff. Why? Because we are about, and then you quote the mission, vision, values, but if those are not really promoted, then it's hard to create high performance teams. All right, the ninth role of managers is to ensure that every team member is committed to quality work. All right, so what that means is this, is that if I have a team of 6, I make sure that all 6 of them are committed to quality work. And that means that I'm not going to just let 5 of them do high quality work, but I have one that's favorite to me, so I'm not going to require that person to good quality work. This here says, no, you have to hold everybody accountable. Do not delay on discipline for those that are not performing, and make sure you are not intolerant about keeping folks that just will not learn how to do things. Your coaching and training, you just have to offboard them properly. Number 10, promote friendly relationships at work between team members. It's very important. You got to really make sure that the team members have great relationships with one another, even if you're not invited to have the parties or the events. And I would even say if you have a $600 budget every quarter or $100,000 to do fun things, man, use half of that budget for them to go do things with each other without you, the supervisor, being involved. It sends a great message that you're trying to encourage the relationships between them. Number 11, ensure that you talk about the progress of each team members on a monthly basis. You don't depend on quarterly reviews, quarterly evaluations. You talk to them every week and every month about their progress. We'll dissect that in other segments later. And number 12, provide each member the opportunity to learn and to grow. And that's pretty tied into number 6 and number 3. I promote this book a lot because it is a fantastic way to keep the managers very focused in their lane. What we've created is we've created this evaluation form that my recommendation is that you take this form and then you use it within your evaluation of your managers, and you ask the team members, the frontline team members, to evaluate their manager or their frontline manager quarterly or every 6 months, definitely after 90 days with a new hire. So whenever a new hire comes on board, give this evaluation to that new hire about that supervisor, about that manager. And man, when you institute this, it's amazing how all of a sudden managers and supervisors step up and they become much more professional. Why? Because HR is now getting this. If you don't have an HR department, well, I can show you how to do this. But using this form, it's a fantastic tool. So contact me. I'll send it to you. Shoot me your email. I'll get it over to you and I can help you implement it. But definitely should be used at least I would recommend quarterly or once every 6 months, and definitely after 90 days when a new hire comes on board. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for being on this show. Thank you for all your feedback, your input. We've created this because of the incredible amount of interaction that we have with you and the amount of feedback you guys give us. So join me at mauricetraining.com. Remember, get into my library by going to winningintheworkplace.com or managementinmovies.com. Thank you guys for joining us. We will see you guys next week here at Winning in the Workplace.